Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today it's time for episode 8 of Fantasy Genre Blends. This is a series where I explore all of the different blends of the fantasy genre. I've really enjoyed this because fantasy, as you guys know, is my most read genre, but I really have liked to use it as a little bit of a catalyst to dip my toe into some other genres. I think it's been really fun. Per usual, we will split this video into 3 different categories. We will do the original TBR that I had made and what I thought of those books. We will do the books that I've read along the way that also fit the mold, and then we will also have my new TBR, the ones that I plan on reading next. That first book on that episode 7 TBR was the Djinn Waits 100 Years, which I did rate a 4.25 star. This was a fantasy horror blend, and I do think that it's very light on both fantasy and horror. This book follows a father and daughter duo who have recently lost the mother in the family, and they have moved to a condo-esque. It's like an estate that has multiple rooms in it that people can stay in that is kind of haunted. And you get to deal with the kind of mystery behind some of the opinions about the mother, some of the past about the mother in the book, some grief as well. And also you get this story as to why this building, this condo, is haunted by this Djinn. And I do think this book is very beautifully written. I think the Djinn, whenever it does appear, it's very eerie, it's very atmospheric, and the descriptions about the house, and there was this one scene where the house literally intakes a breath when something is happening, and that one scene was so eloquently written. I still think about it to this day. So I do think that the overall storyline is more atmospheric than it is creepy or anything like that. If it sounds intriguing to you, I would say that it's worth a read. Next on the list was Empire of Exiles. This was a fantasy mystery that I rated 4 stars. This book is very complicated, and so I'm not going to be able to do it justice by describing kind of what goes on or what's going on. But there are a cast of characters in this, 2 main characters that you follow, one of which is maybe 3 main characters that you follow, but one of them is a young-ish girl, young adult. I want to say she's in her early 20s, but I'm not actually sure. She has this gift that allows her to read and encompass ink. So there are some scenes where like she can literally pull ink up off the page onto her hands, and then she could read it that way. She doesn't actually have to look at anything to read it. But there are a whole bunch of people that have this type of gift, but they don't have it with ink. So she's special in that way. Other people have it with bronze and gold, metals, wood, stone, things like that. And these gifts can be very dangerous if they are not honed and the people are not trained to deal with this magic. And so she has been displaced from her original home because she had a bad moment with her magic and almost died. And so she is now in this like library studier of like mysteries type of situation. She's in like an academic setting. And the main character that you follow, he comes to this place because he has been asked to acquire something for the church, for lack of a better word. And his buddy that's with him ends up in the midst of a murder situation. And I'm not going to say much because you get to witness like what exactly happens, but so one of the main characters that you follow, his buddy ends up involved in a murder, and he has to help solve this mystery as to why the murder happened, what the motives were, who the murderer is, things like that. And he utilizes the help of this young woman who has this skill, as well as her mentor, who is like a teacher in the facility that helps them kind of control their magic. So it's definitely different than any fantasy book I've ever read. The magic system is very intriguing. And I do think that I read this too slow for me to like it more than I did. I rated it 4 stars, so I did really enjoy it and I want to continue. But I do think that because of the fact that I read this on my Kindle, which means it was a nighttime read and I would read it like 5 minutes at a time, there were definitely some really intricate details that I'm sure that I missed because the story is very detailed. But yeah, I'm excited to continue. I want to know where this is going, because this is all set in a land that lives in the midst of a salt wall. So there's this big ring of salt around their city that keeps the changeling army out. And so that is like their history that they've learned about. Years and years ago, there were changelings that could essentially turn into anybody that they wanted to. And it caused a lot of turmoil in the nation, and there was a huge war. And so this empire is also learning from that and recovering from that war and from that fear of the changelings as well. And so you get to hear that history too. There's a lot going on in this storyline. I really enjoyed it. Book number 3 was The Keeper of Enchanted Rooms, and this I rated a 3.75. And I wish that this book would have been a little bit more detailed in the end. That's why it didn't get the rating that I was anticipating it getting, because this is a Charlie Holmberg, who I've loved in the past. But I do feel like a lot of the books, or I guess 2 of the books that I've read by Charlie Holmberg, the ending also kind of fell flat. So anyway, this book follows a character who, well, you follow 2 timelines. You follow a character who is a magic user and is very dark. I'm not even going to say anything else about his character. It's a very dark timeline. And it eventually connects to another timeline where your main character has inherited a home that is an enchanted home, and he is not a magician. Like, he does not know anything about magic. He inherits this magical home. It tries to kill him, and someone comes in from this organization that helps people with their enchanted homes to help kind of break in the home so he can actually live in it. And that timeline is very cute, very cozy, even though the house tries to kill him. It's kind of Addams Family-esque at first, with the house doing kind of crazy things with the person who's moved in. But I think that the 2 timelines and how they came together for me, the timeline with the darker character, I don't think is developed enough for me to really have bought in with it. I almost think I wish there just would have been the one timeline and it would have been like a cute, cozy story. But alas, that's not what happened. I do think that if you like fantasy romance, because that is what this is, I didn't mention that. That's the genre blend that this was, fantasy romance. And it is, I should say, historical fantasy romance. So it's actually a multiple blend. If you do like those things, then I would say give it a try. But if you're looking for the dark storyline and for everything to be really well laid out, I don't know that this is that book. On to other books that I picked up along the way. The first was A Sorceress Comes to Call. This is fantasy horror, and I rated this a 4.25. This is also a retelling of Goose Girl, just so you are aware of that. This story follows the main character, Cordelia, who lives with her mother, who is a sorceress. And Cordelia is living in pretty bad conditions. Her mother is neglectful and abusive, and she is essentially there for her mother's beck and call. She does try to have some type of freedom, goes for horseback rides and things like that, but it's definitely not a great life. And she has learned to try and make herself as small as she possibly can be. Her mother ends up having a plan to marry a very rich person and kind of set themselves up financially by means of using sorcery, and takes Cordelia along. And the story kind of proceeds from there. It is very dark. This story made me so mad for Cordelia, and it wrote her in a way that I think T. Kingfisher had to be really careful, because Cordelia is kind of a pathetic character, and I think writing those types of and I mean that in like she has been forced to become this. Like, she's been forced to become small. And I think you have to take care when writing characters like that, because it can seem like the author is trying to demean that character, or that character isn't capable of any growth, that they're just a stagnant character who is kind of wallowing in their existence. And I don't think that about Cordelia at all. You definitely get the fact that she has been pushed down and she's been abused and she's been neglected, and you are constantly rooting for her. It was never a negative experience, even though I was sad and mad for her. It was always this experience of wanting to like shake her and, you know, help her, like shake her out of like her thoughts that, you know, she's in her head about how she's making all these mistakes. And I don't know, I really appreciated the way that her character was written. I also really enjoyed the magic system in this book and how sorcerers are viewed by society. So that was a lot of fun too. This has a fun cast of characters as well. The people who come together to help Cordelia and get caught up in the sorceress's web, I guess, was kind of found family-esque. It's not super found family, so I'm not going to say that this book has that trope in it, but there are definitely some warm and cozy moments that you get from these individuals who do kind of stand up to this kind of crazy situation that's going on. The next book I read along the way was The Spellshop. This is a fantasy romance, and this book was so cute. I rated this one a 4.5, and I absolutely loved the world that was created here. You have a main character whose name I'm not going to remember at this juncture, but she was originally living in a really big city with this massive library, and that city gets ransacked by some rebels and the library starts to burn. So she grabs what she can, she takes off on a boat, and she goes back to the island that her parents are originally from. And she tries to hide. She doesn't want the people who were in the rebellion to find her because she has taken some materials from the library, and she has to figure out how to live on her own without any resources that she originally had in the city. Her parents are gone, and this is just a lovely story of found family, but also self-discovery. And there is an amazing animal companion. He's a snake plant, and he is just the worriest of worrywart. There's also another plant companion that comes along in the book that is so cute, and I freaking love him, and I want more. It's not a series, so I am a little sad. It is one that I do want to add to my collection. It was a lot of fun. The last book that I got to along the way was the Stardust Grail, and I was a little hesitant to put this in fantasy genre blends because this is fantasy sci-fi, and I don't know if people consider that a genre blend because even though those two genres are separate, they are very similar, but I like it as a genre blend, and so I'm going to count it. I rated this a 4.5 star. You follow a main character who is an art thief and has in her past been someone who has traveled the universe and has stolen artifacts and returned them to their alien civilizations. So this is a space opera, kind of, where you have this universe that has a whole bunch of different types of aliens, and humans and aliens have learned to kind of live in the same area, but there is still definitely tension, and there are politics involved in who is allowed where, what types of aliens are allowed in certain places, which ones are acceptable, which ones are not. There's also an illness that our main character has struggled from and recovered from that a lot of people have died from. So a pandemic, essentially. And she is trying to get her life back. So she is back on Earth, she's going back to school, and she just wants everything to calm down a little bit. She wants to settle down. However, as you probably have guessed, that's not where her story ends. And she does get involved in some way in the hunt of the Stardust Grail. You get to figure out what the Stardust Grail is, what it's for. There are a ton of alien politics in this, as well as friendships and weird scientific discoveries. I thought this book was very, very intriguing. I would like to read it again. I want to own it physically because I did read this on audio, and I think that this had so many really cool facets of the aliens and also these like robot AI like creatures that are also in the the intergalactic web or whatever you want to call it, but it was a lot of fun. On to the TBR portion of this video. I normally only give you guys 3 books that I'm going to read for the next episode, but this time I'm going to give you 4 because I couldn't decide between 2 of them. So anyway, the first book that I'm going to put on this list is actually on my physical TBR, which is The Bad Ones. I absolutely love this cover. However, I keep not reading it because it's a YA fantasy horror, and I'm a little concerned that the YA portion of that is going to disappoint me. I don't remember what this is about, so let's figure it out together. So this says, in the course of a single winter's night, 4 people vanish without a trace across a small town. Nora's estranged best friend, Becca, is one of the lost. As Nora tries to untangle the truth of Becca's disappearance, she discovers a darkness in her town's past, as well as a string of coded messages Becca left for her to unravel. These clues lead Nora to a piece of local lore, a legendary goddess of forgotten origins who played a role in Nora and Becca's own childhood games. I don't know. I think it sounds amazing. I have heard mixed reviews, but fingers crossed it's a win. Next is a fantasy sci-fi, and it is called The City of Last Chances, and I have this one on my phone. I'm going to read the synopsis to you. This is by Adrian... I'm not going to be able to pronounce the last name, so I'm just going to put up a picture so you guys can see. But this is an author I've wanted to give a try for a while, and this just sounds fantastic. There's always been a darkness to Amar, but never more so than now. The city chafes under the heavy hold of occupation, the chokehold of a criminal underground, the boot of its factory workers, and the weight of its wretched poor and burden of its ancient curse. Despite the city's refugees, wanderers, murderers, madmen, fanatics, and thieves, the catalyst, as always, will be Anchorwood, that dark grove of trees, that primeval remnant, that portal, when the moon is full, to the strange and distant shores. Amar, some say, is the worst place in the world and the gateway to 1,000 worse places. It sounds so good. I'm excited about it. And once again, I haven't tried anything by this author and I really want to. This next one is a historical fantasy mystery, and this one was recommended to me by Leandra. It's The Affair of the Mysterious Letter. This is a Sherlock Holmes retelling, and I'm just going to read a little bit of the synopsis. One of the characters, Captain John Wyndham, I believe is the Watson character, is home from war and ends up taking residence at 221B Martyr's Walk. His new housemate, Miss Haas, a consulting sorceress, has a dark reputation, and essentially Miss Haas gets enlisted to solve a case of blackmail against one of her former lovers. Captain Wyndham is drawn into the mystery that leads him from the salons of literary set to the drowned back alleys of the city that they're in, and even to a prison cell. Along the way, he is beset by criminals, menaced by pirates, molested by vampires, almost devoured by mad gods, and called upon to punch a shark. It sounds like a wild time, and I can't wait. The last one is a YA fantasy romance, and it's by Jordan Ifueko, who I have absolutely loved in the past. I talked about her in my last video, and I can't wait. This one has also been recommended as I don't think it's a retelling, but like a book that is similar to Howl's Castle, which I haven't ever watched nor read, but I know that it's beloved, and so maybe that will entice you to read it as well. The synopsis says, in the magic-soaked capital city, small Sadie needs a job, preferably as a maid, for employers who don't mind her unique appearance and unlucky foot. But before she can be hired, she accidentally binds herself to a powerful being known as Only Crocodile, a god who is rumored to devour pretty girls. Small Sadie entrances the crocodile with her secret. She's not only an orphan and an aspiring maid, but also a curse eater, gifted with the ability to alter people's fates by cleaning their houses. The handsome god warns her that their fates are bound, but small Sadie evades him, launching herself into a new career as a curse eater of a swanky inn. She's determined to impress the wealthy inhabitants and earn her place in this city, assuming her secret-filled past and the revolutionary ambitions of the crocodile god don't catch up with her. I don't know, it sounds cute, and I don't know if the romance is going to be between her and the god or between her and somebody else, but I'm excited to find out. So that is the 8th episode of Fantasy Genre Blends and my TBR. Please add to this TBR. I am always looking for options for historical fantasy, for fantasy horror, for fantasy romance, for fantasy mystery. I have a huge list in my bullet journal of books that I can choose from each time, and so the more you guys add, the more my list grows and the more episodes I can do of this, because I really do enjoy this series. I love diving into fantasy genre blends. It's one of my favorite things. If you're not interested in commenting, but you still want to let me know that you're here, just leave whatever emoji you think resonates with fantasy to you. So whether or not that be a dragon or a magic wand or whatever, leave that emoji down below so I know that you are watching. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.